Aisha, how would you rank this government's record when it comes to security?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say 1.
Hello, my people. This is Naija Fix Media, your trusted source for the real political and security gist happening right now in Nigeria. Today, we are talking about the recent Al Jazeera interview with Daniel Bwala, President Tinubu spokesperson. Mehdi Hasan hosted the interview, and he asked very tough questions about insecurity, corruption, and foreign pressure. Bwala tried to defend the government, but in the end, he only ended up embarrassing himself. There were too many gaps in his answers. My people, if you watched that interview, you would just be looking at the screen and asking yourself, is this really the answer? Let me break it down for you so you can understand exactly how it went. It was so bad that Bwala looked like someone who walked straight into a trap. We will go through each question, Bwala's response, and how he struggled. Honestly, it felt like watching a movie scene where the villain is slowly exposed step by step. First, they talked about insecurity. Hasan started strongly. He said Nigeria is now the 5th deadliest country in the world, with about 11,000 people killed in conflict in 2025. He also said the number has increased by 26% since 2023, which is when Tinubu took office. Bwala tried to answer, but he started struggling immediately. His face became tight and his eyes kept moving left and right, almost like someone looking for an escape route. At that point, my people, even someone watching from home could see that the pressure had already started. He smiled awkwardly, but the smile looked forced, like a man who already knew trouble had arrived. He admitted that insecurity exists, but then he said there was substantial peace until what he called the hoax narrative of Christian genocide. Now, my people, pause there small. How can this be the answer? People are dying, families are mourning, and the explanation we are hearing is hoax narrative. Hasan immediately pushed back on Trump's claim that Christians are facing genocide in Nigeria. Bwala called it a half-truth, saying the violence affects both Christians and Muslims. Hasan then asked him directly if Trump was lying, and Bwala avoided the question by saying it was Trump's opinion. At that moment, you could see he was already cornered. He kept dodging the questions with things like, "I'm not aware," or talking about complex security. His voice cracked a little, and he laughed nervously. But my people, that laugh did not help him at all. It was the kind of laugh someone gives when they know the answer is not convincing anybody. Anyone watching could see what was happening. He looked confused, struggling to defend something that everybody already knows is a serious problem. The facts do not support his claims. The government may deny genocide, but killings keep happening, like the recent Kwara massacre, where about 162 people died, and the kidnapping of priests in Kaduna. This interview showed clearly that the denial becomes very weak when someone starts asking direct questions. Then they moved to the issue of the US bombing Nigeria on Christmas Day. Hasan asked why Nigeria allowed Trump to bomb the country. Bwala responded by saying it was not a bombing, but a joint operation based on intelligence sharing. Now, my people, when he said that, even the camera seemed to pause for a moment, because people watching were probably asking the same question. If it was not a bombing, then what exactly happened? At that moment, you could see Bwala shifting in his seat. His smile began to disappear. He leaned forward, trying to look confident, but his voice cracked again. Honestly, he looked uncomfortable, like someone sitting on a hot chair. Hasan kept pushing and asked why Nigeria would allow Trump's action if there was no genocide. Bwala then said, "We appreciate US cooperation." My people, that answer sounded very weak. It was embarrassing to watch. He looked completely out of his depth, like a spokesman who came to an exam without reading the textbook. Maybe he expected the usual kind of interview where you can talk your way around the question.
My people, you know the kind of interviews we see sometimes on local TV, where politicians just start talking plenty grammar until the time finishes. But Mehdi Hasan was not playing that kind of game. You could almost see the moment Bwala realized this was not the same environment. This was not one of those regular back and forth arguments you see on Arise TV, where he goes head to head with Rufai Oseni and tries to dominate the conversation. Those ones sometimes turn into shouting matches where everybody is trying to talk over each other. But this time it was different. On an international platform like Al Jazeera, the questions were structured, the facts were ready, and the interviewer was calm but very precise. So all those usual tactics of arguing, interrupting, and talking your way out were not working. My people, at that point you could almost imagine Bwala thinking, this one is not Arise TV. Because when the questions kept coming, there was nowhere to hide. The more he tried to dodge, the more the gaps in his answers became obvious. Everyone watching, both in the studio and at home, could clearly see he was struggling to defend the position. Hasan did not stop there. He asked about kidnapping, which he described as a structured, profit-seeking industry in Nigeria. Bwala admitted kidnapping is a problem, but said the government is doing a lot to fight it. Hasan then asked the obvious question, what exactly is the government doing? Bwala started talking about arrests and operations, but the answer was very vague. No numbers, no clear examples, just general talk. At that point, my people, you could almost hear viewers saying, but tell us the actual results now. He looked like someone searching for the right words but could not find them. His forehead tightened as he tried to sound confident, but instead he sounded unsure.
Then they moved to corruption. Hasan asked about Alpha Beta Consulting LLP, which many people say is linked to Tinubu and his associates and collects 10% of Lagos tax revenue. Bwala denied that Tinubu owns the company. Hasan then brought up Tinubu's 1993 US court filing linked to heroin trafficking accounts and the $460,000 forfeiture. Bwala responded by saying it was a civil matter, not a criminal case, and that no charges were filed. But you could see the tension on his face. Again and again he kept repeating, "I'm not aware." My people, when someone says "I'm not aware" too many times in an interview, even the audience will start wondering what exactly the person came prepared to discuss. He tried to smile through it, but the smile looked forced. The pattern became very clear. The government says it is fighting corruption, but questions about the president's past or present connections are either denied or avoided with clear evidence. Hasan also reminded Bwala that he once called Tinubu the godfather of corruption, but now he works as Tinubu's spokesperson. Bwala said politics is dynamic and that new facts changed his opinion. Hasan quickly replied that moving between news organizations is not the same as calling someone the godfather of corruption and later working for that same person. At that point, Bwala laughed, but the laugh looked tired. My people, that was the kind of laugh someone gives when they know the point has landed very hard. Hasan also brought up Abubakar Bagudu, who the United States accused of helping Abacha move billions of dollars. Bwala said Bagudu was cleared by US courts. Hasan corrected him, explaining that Bagudu returned $163 million to Nigeria, but the US Justice Department still says he helped Abacha embezzle billions.
At that moment, Bwala looked completely stuck. Again, he repeated, "I'm not aware." Hasan looked surprised because before the interview, Bwala had posted a video online saying he was preparing seriously for the interview. Now, for many of the questions, he kept saying he was not aware. Hasan then asked him directly, "So what exactly were you preparing for?" Bwala smiled again, but it was the kind of never smile someone gives when they realize the game is up. The truth is, these people are not as clever as they think. They cannot fool more than 200 million Nigerians forever. Just look at this same Bwala, who usually speaks with so much confidence, now melting under pressure from just one interviewer in front of the whole world. Imagine what would happen if Nigerians themselves started asking harder questions every day. But here is where hope begins to appear. This Al Jazeera interview was not just ordinary talk. It was exposure on a global stage. When international journalists ask tough questions, it puts pressure on governments to answer. It also shows the world the reality of Nigerians' insecurity and corruption problems. That kind of global attention can sometimes force action, especially as we approach future elections like 2027. My people, this is where hope starts to show face. When the truth comes out on platforms like Al Jazeera, power cannot hide forever. When people see leaders struggling to answer basic questions, they begin to realize that the fight for accountability is not lost. This is not just about Bwala or Tinubu. It is about the truth this interview revealed, that their explanations begin to collapse when someone simply presses harder.
So, what do you think? Does this Al Jazeera interview expose the government's failures on insecurity and corruption? Do you think international pressure from foreign media or world leaders can bring real change? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one of them. Tell us, will this bring hope to ordinary Nigerians? What should be the next move? We will talk more in our next video. Make sure you subscribe to Naija Fix Media, like the video and turn on the notification bell so you stay informed, stay empowered and stay part of the change. Share this report far and wide. Demand answers, demand justice. The people united can never be defeated. This is Naija Fix Media. Stay safe and God bless Nigeria.